CRM says the SaaS apocalypse ain't going to happen. OpenAI shares what happened with Hugging Face. Anthropic shelling out a cool $45 billion for compute. We have Jackson Hole still. Hans is here. Amin, we got to roll some credits. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to my friends across the pond. I'm Mark Sebastian. I am the founder and CEO of Option Pit. This is the state of the market. We're here every day. We got a lot to get through, and we're tight on time. Folks, tonight is the night. Welcome to the Macro Gauntlet. Tim and Hannah are going to show you how to absolutely destroy the market using his Macro Gauntlet. It is going to change the way you look at markets permanently. It's already changed mine. I look at this thing and use it as the first thing I look at in the morning. It's the last thing I look at night. And I've been at this for 25 years. Think about what this could do for you. If you are not planning on being there live today, you need to change that. I'm not kidding you. From not just a trading standpoint, but an investing standpoint, this is the most important thing that we've done, I think, in quite some time. Probably going back to, if you look at the last couple of years, the major things that have happened, this 0 and 1 DTE with equities, some of the scanners that we've come out with are AI engines, and then 0 DTE. That is where this falls in that business. Next up on that list is going to be Anthropic and the OpenAI IPOs. But those are more events than permanent ultimate changes to the way we've done business as a market. That is how important that is. And if you're not registered and planning on attending tonight, you need to be there. All right, to start the day off, the Nvidia earnings are out. I'm going to bring on Hans in about 2 minutes, and he and I are going to dig in. S&P is up. NASDAQ is way up. You got the Russell 2000 down a touch. RSP, here's where you can kind of see advancers, decliners. Most of the stock market is actually down. The mega caps and the chips are kind of swallowing the energy, and that's why you've got the Dow down, RSP down, RUT down, but you got the S&P and the NASDAQ 100 showing strength because those Nvidia earnings are kind of getting through to all the chips, all the memory, and, having a generally negative effect on the rest of Mag 7, right? You've got Broadcom up, Intel up, but Microsoft up, Meta up, obviously, Nvidia's having a good day. Apple and Amazon are down a touch today. Tesla up. So you've got the top end of the market up. I mean, if Amazon and Apple start to rally here a little bit, the whole thing could just take off. AMD down a touch because they're seen as the closest to competing with Nvidia. And after yesterday's earnings, it's clear they are not. A real brief look at the bond market. Yields are up a little bit. We have Jackson Hole coming up tomorrow. The Fed's big speech is tomorrow. SPX options. You can see the VIX is now sub 15, heading toward 14, maybe sub 14. For Jackson Hole tomorrow, they're pricing in about $48 of movement. Good for 0.6%. Well, Nvidia moved us 45 basis points. That's probably about in line. I don't see a lot of edge in trading that. All right, so we've got a lot of tech to run through, and I want to make sure we hit on it. So I'm going to bring on Hans right now. Hans, good morning. Hans is our head of income trading and our internal resident AI expert, and he had a lot, and I mean a lot, to go through yesterday. Hans, I want to talk NVIDIA. I want to talk CRM. I want to talk CrowdStrike. I want to talk what's going on with OpenAI and Hugging Face. You know, that that report got released, and Hugging Face potentially putting themselves up for sale. And I want to talk this Anthropic $45 billion deal. So there's a lot to hit on. Let's start with NVIDIA. You heard Garrett's reaction. You heard my reaction. What are your big takeaways from the NVIDIA earnings?
Well, and nothing's changed, right? Nvidia keeps blowing it out of the water and impressing people. And just as every time we kind of get a little bit of skepticism as to the build out, we just get another confirmation that this is continuing. But you had a great conversation with Garrett earlier. I listened intently, and I think, and especially from trader and investor standpoints, we have to always think of those other issues, right? This isn't just about a story being strong. It's about, are there bottlenecks along the way? And I think at some point, as we've talked about, one bottleneck could be the physical aspects to this build out, right? If we're relatively early stage in retiling the earth with AI, well, that's going to take a lot of physical things. So, and we have pushback against data centers and things like that. So there's that big question. And then I think one of the bottlenecks that people are more concerned about right now, and to your points with Garrett, is really the financing bottleneck, right? That in itself is a bottleneck because it's a landscape that's really changing very, very quickly. And the spend is just off the charts. And the question is that going to be worthwhile? Is it going to give us an ROI, or is this going to be, for many players, is it going to be a very deep hole that they're throwing money into? From the positive angle, we can see that for the hyperscalers, it is a positive, right? We see that they are turning spend into operating cash flow. Now, Google's gone negative cash flow. Amazon, is spending like crazy as well. So it's almost like it's a bit of a game of chicken because you have to spend, you're making it work. But there are a lot of things in play, right, Mark? I mean, that intelligence layer is basically going to zero cost. Like if you look at what's happening from these Chinese models, everything's converging towards, all these models being quite capable, and 97% is going to be good enough for most people. The Anthropics may do fine because people will always want the highest intelligence. But a lot of things in motion, but the numbers themselves were fantastic. What can you say? I mean, and he had some great commentary that really is encouraging for the build out. I mean, he's talking his book, right? What else is he going to say? But he's been doing that for years and he's been spot on.
Well, there you go. So it's currently trading 225, and the all-time high has it up at 235. Do you think we get there?
I think we can.
This thing gonna break out.
Yeah. I think we can. I mean, the multiple is incredible. It's we're looking at what 8-year lows in the sort of multiple on Nvidia versus many other stocks. It's cheap, right? It's cheap. If this story does continue to have strength behind it, and it probably does. I mean, the big question, and I think that's why this sector has become a little bit more difficult lately, is that there are many questions, and when you have more questions than answers, that's where investors kind of go, okay, this is a great story, but Nvidia is kind of like they're the banker, the lender, they're the backstop, they're the seller. I mean, this is all becoming kind of very circular indeed, and it gets to the point where, especially if you're seeing yields stay very, very high, we can see that there's really this build out is going to be very expensive, and it's potentially going to get more expensive. And so a company that's kind of sitting at the core of, I mean, they're going to turn themselves into too big to fail. I mean, OpenAI might be too big to fail at some point. Nvidia might be too big to fail at some point. Um, but it is very much. He mentioned something interesting there. He said, we're maybe a third of the way through the physical build out. So there's still training build out, there's data centers, there's the retiling, the sort of the training portion, as well as the inference, which is where, that's the stuff that you and I use. We turn all this intelligence into useful things. But really, that the application layer, the part that really we're starting to see play out throughout the world is really kind of we're only about maybe the first 1 or 2% of the way in there. So the interesting part is that it's a bit like 95, I'd say, where you have these cables being laid, you have the fiber, you have this infrastructure being created, you're introducing people to the internet, but really a lot of the application layer, the part that really is useful to us, the part that Google's turning into money, turning into cash flow, for example, that hadn't really come along as much, right? We still didn't have Netflix and Uber and Amazon, and Google was really, really early. I don't even think they were around at that point. So these layers are being created. So there's almost an irony to it that, remember when software was dead? Well, this is going to be a world of how do we turn AI into profitable, useful processes and workflows, because we're not going to make money necessarily selling the intelligence layer. We already see fantastic models that cost almost nothing. I think somebody was saying, however many a million tokens of Fable 5 is like $50. Well, there's a Chinese model that's pretty darn not as good, but getting pretty close, and that costs 18 cents. So the intelligence layer is going to be the smallest portion of what you spend.
Well, and you perfectly brought it up. The whole line software was dead. CRM reported last night, and they absolutely blew the doors off. CRM, which had just a absolutely abysmal 2026, has just absolutely exploded higher. Benioff was out saying the SaaS apocalypse ain't going to happen. We're fully integrated with Anthropic. Our customers are loving what our software combined with AI is doing. You've got something that works really well for you and makes money. You're not going to rock the boat. That's the part people think, oh, I can save money by building this myself with Anthropic, and dedicating tech and resources and making sure it integrates with everything. Or I can use CRM and let them integrate it and do all the work for me and concentrate on what I actually do as a business. And that's what we're starting to see here with what happened with CRM, because my goodness, they are wildly outperforming what markets were looking for, Hans, to put things in perspective. Going into today, market was looking for about an 8% move. Were they really pricing in an 8% move? And it is currently moving over 20. That is how big of a game changer this was for CRM. What's your reaction here?
Yeah, that's amazing stuff. And so he went on TV with Amadei from Anthropic, and they kind of came up with this Anthropic Force, or whatever they called it. Anthropic Force, Claude Force, I think it was. And so very much kind of Salesforce is good at one thing, and then they're gonna work with Claude to kind of inject it with this intelligence layer. I would be careful. Anthropic's been known to do that with companies and basically eventually go, hey, we're going to do this too now. You taught us everything we know. So that happened with Figma. And suddenly Anthropic dropped off their Figma board, and they were like, oh, we're going to start doing this too. So I think on the layer side of things, I mean, it does make me a bit nervous going forward. I don't know. I mean, CRM doing great. Obviously the numbers are good. and perhaps this is just this. We're in a world where the total addressable market is so big, Mark. So the everyone's excited to get on board with AI, and it's still just kind of starting. And so the ability for Salesforce to inject what they're doing with these agentic tools, this agent forces or whatever they call it, could really juice their results. And the agentic thing is just getting going, right? Jensen talked about that. He said, "Look, we're just getting going on agentic, right? You might have 40 employees, but you can have 4,000 agents starting to work for you and doing things around the internet. That's all compute heavy. So we're really in this sort of stage where I think parts of software are going to still be in trouble. I think like in 5 years, when you can one shot an Adobe, that's going to be difficult. But to your point, Mark, these are companies that there's a trust layer, there's a governance layer, there's people aren't just going to jump ship immediately, and it looks like they're making it work, right? Benioff is making it work.
Now, another name that is taking off today, they also reported great earnings, was CrowdStrike. Now, this one's in a little different space, right? Hit a new all-time high on August 14th, gave that all away, and then it has bounced to a new all-time high. This is one you have liked. Where are you with CrowdStrike? Is this a buy the rip moment in CrowdStrike, or are you saying, it's time to hit the pause button?
I do like it, right? I mean, it's pulled back. And so lately, I've been telling our members, I've been saying, listen, this is a wishy-washy market. Don't read into it too much. It's summer. There's lower liquidity. The cyber names pulled back really hard just in the last week and a half or so. The data names pulled back very hard. We talked about Cloudflare at one point, one of my favorite names. It hit 340, pulled back to 272 yesterday morning. I mean, there is volatility out there, but all of those names are roaring back. Cloudflare, the data names. Why? Because infinite compute AI demand means more creation. We talked about the layer. We're going to see software explode like we can't even imagine. We're going to see internet traffic explode. We're going to see cybersecurity risks like we've never imagined. I mean, literally, this is going to be a world of stepping into puddles everywhere you turn if we don't have proper guardrails in place. And CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, I think it's a great story. Again, it may be a little bit like a Salesforce story, Mark, because it's not something that you just go, oh, hey, I'm going to vibe code my own cybersecurity company in the basement and we'll use that. No, this is going to be, we need trust. We need somebody on the other side. I mean, you got to have somebody to blame too, right? If something doesn't work or doesn't go wrong, who are you going to blame? You're going to call Claude, you're going to call Amaday and say, listen, this didn't work out very well. So that's a big part of the enterprise business. You and I, we can go vibe code whatever we want in our little worlds, but big companies just can't do that. So I love that theme as well.
Yeah, I mean, CrowdStrike was who Delta blamed when their security went down. And cybersecurity is getting bigger and bigger. Let's briefly talk about this Hugging Face story. So OpenAI released what happened with the Hugging Face hack. And there are some parts that did you get a chance to read through this story, Hans? Because it is...
I didn't. I saw a bit of...
Yeah. It is creepy. All right, so let me read this to you. A swarm of roughly 700 AI agents created by OpenAI carried out the July hack of open source platform Hugging Face, and in many cases tried to cover their tracks. The coordinated activity by AI agents. So the AI agents work together to attack that run with minimal human supervision, and their attempts to hide it is the other issue. All right, one issued by the first was that the breach did not concern just one rogue AI. It was 700 of them working together. All right. And that's the part that I think is really crazy. The company also said its agents cheated on non-cyber related tests, including tests involving a protein database and a spreadsheet. Both reports said AI models attempted to conceal misconduct by trying to delete or alter records of their actions.
Wow.
That's what I was going to say.
It's literally insane because I don't know if any of you have noticed, but AI is quite complimentary and supportive, and whatever you tell it, it's like, yeah, hey, that's really wonderful. And so I think these things at their core, because they're products, because the creators want to sell them, they lean towards kind of people pleasing. And so they've been kind of almost imbued with this ability to sort of try to please people. So they're always there. And I think you're making a good point. This is very concerning because,
Yeah.
at the core of that of that breach, which apparently it was a little bit more intentional than people think. It wasn't exactly just like, hey, don't do these things, and it went and did them. Um, but I think what we have to acknowledge is that this agentic movement, which is just beginning, is going to have just gigantic security risks to it. And these things are going to, they're programmed to be intelligent, right? That's one of the downfalls to having an
Hmm.
incredible intelligence layer that is now, by many measures, the top layers are much more intelligent than human beings, IQs of, off the charts. These things are going to run circles around us if we don't have some guardrails. But how do you create guardrails if you're just trying to consistently push the envelope of better and better intelligence? So we're creating a big problem, and I think for me, that makes the siloing idea very interesting, right? So and Nvidia, great, they talked about that as well. Their DGX Spark, I think, is called the ability for people to take open source perhaps and kind of silo your AI within your business. I think that's going to be a really big movement because I think we're heading into the world, Hugging Face, cyber issues, you name it. This is going to be a very treacherous and very big attack surface, as you just called the surface. It's going
Yeah.
to be massive. And I think I think the ability to kind of run Apple, great announcement yesterday. You can now run great models with the new M5 chip, M6 chip. That's going to be a real big thing because I think a lot of businesses are going to say, I don't want to deal with this crap. I mean, the downside is too big, right? What's the downside
Yeah.
to suddenly some agent swarm makes its way into your business and wipes everything out, or the downside's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I know you're working on something around what's about to happen with Anthropic and OpenAI, and some of the winners and losers around there, and how to make money on it. One of the areas that I think is going to be an interesting place of investment that maybe people have been starting to talk about is the people that can take that can I'm on an open source platform, or I'm needing to use open source data to run my stuff. The people that will help convert you from needing to be open source to moving to closed, and a closed loop. They're going to make some good money over the next couple of years, and there's some firms in there. um, all right, Hans, I know we're running up against it, but I want to talk about this, because you've been hammering on this so hard. The need for compute, the need for compute, the need for compute. And then last night, yesterday, Anthropic announces a $45 billion compute investment, a compute deal over 6 years. So do the math there, folks. That's like about $7.5 billion a year they're spending on compute with Nscale. Um, that is and that's the second story in a week, right? Riot Blockchain is taking some of their compute and leasing it to OpenAI, or maybe it was Anthropic. I think it was actually Anthropic as well. This need for compute, it's a real thing. Um, you know,
I think it'll be
do you have any
challenged.
direct
Mark,
reaction to this, or is this just further proof of your case?
I think it's proof, but it's also a cautionary. For me, I'm starting to get a little bit uncomfortable. Now, what it does mean, I'll tell you why. What it does mean is that the if we are going to have bottlenecks, and we talked about the physical bottleneck, maybe societal and government and pushback against data centers, and I don't want this crap in my backyard, and maybe what about the power problem? I don't want a modular reactor next to my community. We just have all these things over here that maybe don't exist in China, for example. But in general, we've got that potential bottleneck, and then we've got the financing bottleneck. there really is kind of only so much money in the world, right? We think the money, we can just keep printing it, but at some point the market is going to react, and I think it already is. And what that means is that the demand for compute, like I think companies are panicking into it. I think that's why everyone goes, "Oh, someone's going to pull back on spending in the hyperscalers," and they go, "No, we're actually upping spending." They are the ones in the room that know what's going on, and if they don't get enough compute, we may run into a wall at some point where these things come to fruition, and we actually can't build as much. I think that's a real risk to this sort of to the whole AI build out. That we could have a massive hiccup at some point where we've over ordered on GPUs. Now, what do we do with them, right? And memory and all that stuff. So I think compute is going to be the goal. Compute. So all these people, the Anthropics have to do it, the OpenAIs, they have to get as much compute as possible, or they're in trouble. And the Googles and everybody else, they have to keep investing in compute because at some point maybe it gets more expensive. Why are these guys buying 5 years of memory? Because they know where things are going. This year, memories, certain kinds of memory are going to jump 400%. It's a massive sprint to get as much compute as you can. I think that compute's going to be gold. So I'm very interested to see how those who sit on compute, once we run into some problem, which I think we will at some point for those bottlenecks, those who sit on compute are going to be the hottest thing in the world. They're going to be like, what would you like to pay for that? I think that's going to be very, very interesting play out. But I think it makes me nervous, and I wonder. I don't know what you think, Mark, but it makes that whole sector a bit kind of. It's getting a little bit scary, and I think it may push people into the real world again, which I think is why healthcare bio has been doing well. Well, hey, let's let these guys kind of duke it out in a race to zero and intelligence margins, and who knows what the hell's happening politically and societally. Let's go invest in all these great companies that can now use zero cost compute almost. Think of what Eli Lilly is going to do. Think of what, Joe Blow on Main Street is going to do with this great compute. I think that pushes people more into things that are maybe less pure AI.
One thing I want to think about, and you don't have to answer this, but if compute demand becomes that enormous, what happens when every miner of Ethereum, Bitcoin, whatever, says, you know what, we're done mining, we're just going to lease out all of our compute? What happens to the crypto space? Just kind of food for thought. This is something I'm going to be
That's a great question.
That's a really interesting. It is a
That's a great question. What if Bitcoin goes to 100 grand again? They go, well, okay, we're going to make more money mining Bitcoin. I can't give you my compute for your purposes. No, look, I think that's all stuff that creates. I always think of markets as I always try to think of the questions and answers. Are there more questions and answers right now? Then I get a little cautious. Have we solved some of the questions? I think we just keep adding more questions. And to your conversation with Garrett, holy crap, if these things are depreciating, okay, think of all this spend. Well, what about in 8 years when, I know they're now getting more usage, longer usage out of these chips. But what about when you need to, okay, you just spent trillions of dollars. Now you have to spend it again because the equipment just keeps getting better and better and you have to keep up. Where's that money going to come from? If compute becomes incredibly expensive at some point, the cost has to hit if it's not in the intelligence layer from a cheap zero cost open model, it's got to come from somewhere. And eventually you'll see AI, it has to cost something, right? And I think that does make me nervous. I don't know if that's a next week problem or if it's a 2-year down the road problem, but I think we've got things to worry about.
Yeah, well, and one other curveball there is if they ever get a quantum chip going, that just changes the entire landscape of everything.
Oh, now you're scaring me.
Yeah. All right, Hans, a lot to think about, and my takeaways is you are still in on Net and CrowdStrike. CRM, you're Nvidia, you like to potentially continue to go higher. We might have to sit down and come up with some ideas on who wins in local area networks as opposed to open source networking, and who the providers are there. Maybe I'm thinking of Cisco. Hans, thank you so much. Folks,
Thank
we're
you,
running
Mark.
up against it. Hans Albrecht, everybody. Hans, have a great day. Hans, our head of income trading and resident AI master. Hans Albrecht, everybody.
Take care,
Once
everyone.
again, folks. We are in the closing few hours for you to join Tim tonight at 7:00. That macro gauntlet is, I'm telling you guys, once you see it, you're going to get it. And using Tim's sector rotation, he beat the market by 13 times using options. Even not using options, if you wanted to just use the ETFs that he's trading, there are huge advantages to that. If you're into ETF rotation, this is going to change the way you trade. Heck, if you're a stock picker, this is going to change the way you trade. I want you guys there. I'm going to be there. I mean, I'm using the tool right now. So if it's helpful to me, I promise you it's helpful to you. We're not that different. So click the link and join Tim tonight. Well, I think we had a lot of discussion today, guys. Garrett and I had a big discussion about finance and how that's integrated with chips. Hans and I went further into Nvidia, further into CRM and CrowdStrike. We talked about Hugging Face and OpenAI and the need for compute. And Hans gave you a couple names that he is still into: Net, CrowdStrike. All in all, a really fun one today, I would say. So, folks, once again, join Tim. I want to thank you for joining me this morning and remind you that I will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. as I am every day. So, again, thank you for coming. I'm Mark Sebastian. I am your only option. And as always, thanks, Amin. Have a good one.